of the Old Testament in the book of Genesis. Where we are right now in the narrative, of course, the very first Sunday, we saw Joseph basically being kidnapped by his 10 older half-brothers. He is sold into slavery. He winds up in the household of an Egyptian named Potiphar. All went well there. He was working hard and he rose to a place of prominence in the household. And then he was wrongly accused of molesting Potiphar's wife. He was thrown into prison. Even in prison, he gained the favor of the jailer, and he served so faithfully. Last Sunday, we saw Joseph. This was amazing. He rose to the position of second in command in Egypt. He had interpreted 2 dreams for Pharaoh, dreams that foretold 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine. Joseph advised Pharaoh to put away 1/5 of the harvest each year so that there would be grain during the famine. We pick up the story this morning at Genesis chapter 1, beginning with verse 46. Hear now the word of God. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. 30 years old, all right? We read that Joseph was 17 when his brothers did this dastardly deed. 13 years had now gone by. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went through all the land of Egypt. During the 7 plenteous years, the earth produced abundantly. He gathered up all the food of the 7 years when there was plenty in the land of Egypt. And he stored up food in the cities. He stored up in every city the food from the fields around him. So Joseph stored up grain in such abundance, like the sand of the sea, that he stopped measuring it. It was beyond measure. A whole lot of grain. Before the years of famine came, Joseph had 2 sons, whom Asenath, daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bore to him. Joseph named the firstborn Manasseh, for, he said, God has made me forget all my hardship and all my father's house. The second he named Ephraim, for God has made me fruitful in the land of my misfortunes. Now the names that Joseph gives his sons acknowledge God's involvement in this massive change in his life. The slavery, the time in prison, these are now in the rearview mirror. God has prospered Joseph in the very land where he experienced much of this misfortune. Yet the names are also bittersweet. At the root of Joseph's misfortunes are the actions of his 10 older brothers. Boo. They did him so wrong. So what does it mean, that name Manasseh, God has made me forget all my father's house? What does that mean for Joseph? There are the 10 brothers who threw him into the pit, sold him for 20 pieces of silver. But then there's also his little brother Benjamin and his father Jacob, whom he surely misses. Have those wounds healed? I read on. The 7 years of plenty that prevailed in the land of Egypt came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began to come, just as Joseph had said. There was famine in every country, but throughout the land of Egypt there was bread. When all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, "Go to Joseph, what he sends to you, do." Since the famine had spread over all the land, Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe in the land of Egypt. Moreover, all the world came to Joseph in Egypt to buy grain, because the famine became severe throughout the world. So, just as an aside, Egypt has become the breadbasket for all the world, and Joseph has been instrumental in this. And Joseph is quick to give God the credit. I remember the meaning of his son Ephraim's name. God has made me fruitful. God makes Joseph fruitful, and through Joseph's fruitfulness, Egypt becomes a resource for all the world to buy grain. Now this is me, and it may not be you, but I like my country helping other countries that find themselves in need. I think it honors God. All right, well now, in the narrative, we get to see how things stand on the home front. We're going to pick this up now. We're crossing the chapter line. We're in Genesis chapter 42. When Jacob learned that there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, this is just such a bad thing. Why do you keep looking at each other? I have heard, he said, that there is grain in Egypt. Go down and buy grain for us there, that we may live and not die. So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. But Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, for he feared that harm might come to him. Thus the sons of Israel, remember Israel is Jacob's other name, the sons of Israel were among the other people who came to buy grain, for the famine had reached the land of Canaan. So, the 10 brothers that Jacob sends, are the 10 stinkers that sold Joseph into slavery. All right? So, here these guys are. We continue the narrative. Now, Joseph was governor over the land. It was he who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed themselves before him with their faces to the ground. When Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he treated them like strangers and spoke harshly to them. Where do you come from? He said. They said, from the land of Canaan, to buy food. Although Joseph had recognized his brothers, they did not recognize him. Joseph also remembered the dreams that he had dreamed about them. Do you remember those dreams? Yeah, these are the dreams. They're in Genesis chapter 37. A recap. Joseph says to his brothers, listen to this dream that I dreamed. There we were, binding sheaves in the field. Suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, and your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf. And then he had this other dream. Look, I have another dream. The sun, the moon, and 11 stars, that representing the 10 older brothers and Benjamin, the younger brother, were bowing down to me. And you know, I just read, right? And Joseph's brothers came and bowed themselves before him. So the dreams are coming true, aren't they? Joseph said to them, you are spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land. They said to him, no, my lord, your servants have come to buy food. We are all sons of one man. We are honest men. Your servants have never been spies. But he said to them, no, you have come to see the nakedness of the land. They said, we are your servants. We, your servants, are 12 brothers, the sons of a certain man in the land of Canaan. The youngest, however, is now with our father, and one is no more. But Joseph said to them, it is just as I have said to you, you are spies. Here is how you shall be tested. As Pharaoh lives, you shall not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Let one of you go and bring your brother, while the rest of you remain in prison, in order that your words may be tested, whether there is truth in you. Or else, as Pharaoh lives, surely you are spies. He put them all together in prison for 3 days. On the third day, Joseph said to them, do this and you will live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers, remember the earlier deal was, hey, 9 of you are going to stay, one of you is going to go back and get the brother that's not here. But he's saying, no, let one of your brothers stay here where you are imprisoned. The rest of you shall go and carry grain for the famine of your households, and bring your youngest brother to me. Thus your words will be verified, and you shall not die. And they agreed to do so. They said to one another, alas, we are paying the penalty for what we did to our brother. We saw his anguish when he pleaded with us, but we would not listen. This is why this anguish has come upon us. I'm sensing remorse here among the 10, right? It's like, oh gosh, how's that go? The chickens have come home to roost. Is that how it goes? You know. Then Reuben's the oldest, he answered them, did I not tell you not to wrong the boy? But you would not listen. So now there comes a reckoning for his blood. So here Reuben plays the I told you so card, right? This is Reuben who, yeah, he wasn't there when the other 9 sold Joseph into slavery, but he came back right after, and we did not see Reuben pursuing the slave traders, right, to buy Joseph back, did we? And in fact, when they decided, hey, we're just going to get this robe of many colors in blood, and we'll let Dad think that a wild animal got Joseph, Reuben, he participated in that deception. So, all right. Continue on, verse 23. The brothers did not know that Joseph understood them, since he spoke with them through an interpreter. Joseph turned away from them and wept. Then he returned and spoke to them. And he picked out Simeon and had him bound before their eyes. Joseph then gave orders to fill their bags with grain, to return every man's money to his sack, and to give them provisions for their journey. And this was done for them. They loaded their donkeys with their grain and departed. When one of them opened his sack to give his donkey fodder at the lodging place, he saw his money at the top of the sack. He said to his brothers, "My money's been put back. Here it is in my sack." At this they lost heart and turned trembling to one another, saying, "What is this that God has done to us?" When they came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had happened to him, saying, "The man, the Lord of the land, spoke harshly to us and charged us with spying on the land." But we said to him, "We are honest men, we are not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is no more, and the youngest is now with our father in the land of Canaan." Then the man, the Lord of the land, said to us, "By this I shall know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers with me. Take grain for the famine of your households, and go your way. Bring your youngest brother to me. I shall know that you are not spies, but honest men. Then I will release your brother to you, and you may trade in the land." As they were emptying their sacks, there in each one's sack was his bag of money. When they and their father saw their bundles of money, they were dismayed. It's like, uh-oh, it's not just one brother who got their money back. It's all of them. And their father Jacob said to them, "I am the one you have bereaved of children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more." Right? That's the brother that they left behind. "And now you would take Benjamin. All this has happened to me." And Reuben said to his father, "You may kill my 2 sons if I do not bring him back to you. Put Benjamin in my hands, and I will bring him back to you." But Jacob said, "My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead," for Benjamin and Joseph, full brothers, "and he alone is left. If harm should come to Benjamin on the journey that you are to make, you would bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to Sheol." Jacob is down 2 sons now. Joseph, who disappeared all these years ago, he's dead, so far as Jacob knows. And now Simeon is gone. And Jacob is not about to risk a 3rd son, Benjamin, who in all likelihood has become Jacob's pride and joy. You remember part of the animosity between those older brothers and Joseph was that Dad always did like Joseph best. Right? This was trouble. They were jealous. Well, in all likelihood, Benjamin, who is also the son of Rachel, same as Joseph, and this was Jacob's first love, and so this is why he loved these 2 boys the best. Likely Benjamin has now become the favored son. For Jacob, the cost is simply too high. No, I will not let Benjamin go with you back to Egypt. Now, we will learn next week what it takes for Jacob to risk Benjamin. But I will give you a clue this morning. Egypt experienced 7 years of abundance. So coming next is how many years of famine? 7. The food that the 9 brothers brought back from Egypt runs out before the famine runs its course. So Jacob is going to face the prospect of losing what is left of his family to starvation. if they don't pursue the only course that the Lord of the land, Joseph, has left open to them. If they don't bring Benjamin back, then surely Jacob and his sons, his family there in Canaan, they're going to die. Next week, we will see Jacob risk the one son most precious to him for the sake of his own life and the lives of those whom he loves. A story. Pastor and writer Ben Patterson tells this story on himself. 1988, three friends and Patterson, who's a pastor and author, they decided to climb Mount Lyell, which is the highest peak in Yosemite National Park. As Patterson tells the story, two of them were experienced mountaineers, but he was not one of those two. Right? He and another friend, they were the newbies. So they were doing this climb. They made it to the base camp. Base camp was within 2,000 feet of the peak, but the climb from the base camp to the top and back was going to take the better part of the day, in large part due to the difficulty of crossing a glacier that you had to cross to get to the top of the mountain. Well, as they were hiking, a gap opened up between the experienced mountaineers and Patterson and the other guy. And being competitive by nature, he decided he was going to try to take a shortcut, beat him at the top. And he thought he saw one at an outcropping of rock. So he went for it, despite the protests of his companion. In Patterson's words, 30 minutes later, I was trapped in a cul-de-sac of rock atop the Lyell Glacier, looking down several hundred feet of a sheer slope of ice, pitched at about a 45-degree angle. I was only about 10 feet from the safety of a rock, but one little slip, and I wouldn't stop sliding until I landed in the valley floor some 50 miles away. It was nearly noon, and the warm sun had the glacier glistening with slippery ice. I was stuck, and I was scared. It took an hour for my experienced climbing friends to find me. Standing on the rock I wanted to reach, one of them leaned out and used an ice axe to chip two little footsteps in the glacier. Then he gave me the following instructions. Ben, you must step out from where you are and put your foot where the first foothold is. When your foot touches it, without a moment's hesitation, swing your other foot across and land it on the next step. When you do that, reach out and I will take your hand and pull you to safety. Well, that sounded real good to me. It was the next thing he said that made me more frightened than ever. But listen carefully. As you step across, do not lean into the mountain. If anything, lean out of it. Otherwise, your feet may fly out from under you and you will start sliding down. I don't like precipices. When I am on the edge of a cliff, my instincts are to lie down and hug the mountain, to become one with it, not to lean away from it. But that was what my good friend was telling me to do. I looked at him real hard. Was there any reason at all, that I should not trust him? Well, I certainly hope not. So for a moment, based solely on what I believed to be